Welcome to Corner of the Galaxy, the show that talks 100% LA Galaxy soccer. We're glad you could join us. Now it's time to sit back and relax as your hosts navigate through the twisting, turning, but never boring world of the five-time MLS Cup champion, LA Galaxy. And now, here are your hosts, Josh Guesman and Wendy Thomas.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Corner of the Galaxy on cornerofthegalaxy.com. I'm your host, Josh Guesman. Glad to have you with us on a Thursday, August 31st, for another live show right here at Corner of the Galaxy. A lot of interesting things to talk about tonight as the LA Galaxy get ready to host the Colorado Rapids. Perhaps their only chance at getting a win throughout the remainder of the season at home or on the road. Some really tough scheduling coming up for the LA Galaxy. So we're going to talk about that at the end of the show. Obviously, a bunch of LA Galaxy news, including a new assistant coach. Dominic Kinnear is going to be brought into the coaching staff as an assistant coach next to Siggy, so we're going to talk about that as well. So we have a bunch to get to, but before we get to any of that, let's make sure we say stop and say hi to Miss Wendy Thomas. Wendy, how's it going?
It's going really well. How are you, Josh?
I'm hanging in there. We're trying to get through this week. A long weekend approaching. So I know everybody's, I'm sure, anxious to be on the weekend already. I don't know if the LA Galaxy game is going to ruin a bunch of people's weekends, but at least that's the plan right now, right?
What are your plans for this weekend?
I am going to stay home and not have to go anywhere. I think that's going to be a plus. But except for the Galaxy game on Saturday night, I will be there.
Okay, you're taking like the possum approach to the weekend. You're gonna sort of rejuvenate yourself, as they would say.
That is the best chance I possibly could have, and with it being so hot, maybe I'll just hide and maybe keep out of the heat. And during this live show we have tonight, Wendy, who knows? The power could go out because it's been going in and out all day. We could have thunderstorms. We could have rain. That's been happening around the studio as well. So lots of fun, weather items sort of coming into play on the show tonight.
Well, I certainly hope that we don't lose power and that it doesn't thunderstorm for too long, because I am getting on a flight tomorrow morning. I'm flying to New York City for the weekend, and I really hope that my flight does not get canceled.
Yeah, that would be. I think you're okay. Mornings are good. Afternoon, convective activity. You have some building clouds. The heat turns the moisture that's near the beach into clouds, turns into thunderstorms. Don't worry. That's my meteorology. A little bit of my education. Being a pilot and that type of thing. That's
right. You have a pilot's license. I forgot about that.
Yes, which I don't get to use anymore. But anyway, LA Galaxy, back to that. I just want to, before we get too far into this, I want to remind everybody about the upcoming Robert Morris hosting and holding a photography class that's going to help you possibly get into sports photography, photographers of all levels. This is something that is so super interesting to me, and I've talked to Robert about it a whole bunch. Let's get to just a little bit. If you've ever wanted to shoot professional sports from the sidelines, now's your chance. Join Canon Live Learning Center, Orange County, for this exciting, immersive learning experience with Major League Soccer's LA Galaxy team photographer Robert Morra and Canon's John Lawrence. This hands-on workshop is for individuals interested in all levels of sports photography. During the 3-day workshop, you'll learn the latest sports photography techniques and Canon technologies that enable sports photographers to capture that decisive moment in time. And of course, you'll have the unique opportunity to photograph from the sidelines of an LA Galaxy game. And Wendy, not just any LA Galaxy game, by the way. It is when the LA Galaxy will host Toronto FC. So you got Michael Bradley coming in, Josie Altidore, Sebastian Giovinco. You could Roman Alessandrini, Dos Santos should be back as well. There's a whole bunch of people you could take pictures of on the sidelines that make that a little more interesting than just say Colorado.
No, I mean, Toronto is maybe the single most interesting story in MLS this season. They're absolutely tearing it up. I think they might tie up the Supporter Shield race, in the early stages of October or something like that. I mean, they're absolutely fantastic. If you are a Toronto fan, this is probably a great game to go to, because they are going to storm through Los Angeles. I can only imagine.
Oh, it'll be like a small speed bump on a freeway. Yeah, I don't even know if they'll notice that they stopped. But anyway, this particular class goes from September 15th through September 17th. The cost is $575. I know that sounds like a lot, but the instruction that you're getting, and if you have that type of money and you're into photography, photography is not cheap, but the instruction you're getting is absolutely top notch. And if you go ahead and type in the promo code GALAXY, because Robert says that, here at the show that we're such nice people, and because Robert is such nice people, our listeners can get a $50 discount. So we can take $50 off of that, which is a lot. $50 discount off that, and you could go and do this. So September 15th through September 17th, promo code GALAXY. Just go to Canon, that's CANON.US/soccer. All right, CANON.US/soccer, and you can be photographing the LA Galaxy from the sidelines of that Toronto FC game. So if I wasn't going to be in the press box, Wendy, I think maybe I would take Robert up on this particular deal. But it looks like a lot of fun. If you're into photography, this is the ultimate sort of class.
You're going to learn how to perfect the perfect selfie shot.
I hope so. You got to get really long arms. That's what I heard. That's why the basketball players are so good at it. Yep, I know these things. These are important things to know. All right, the LA Galaxy coming off a 3-0 loss to the San Jose Earthquakes. Wendy, I know nobody's really that excited about talking about this game, but lots of things happened. There's some things we could go into detail about. I mean, I'll get your general thoughts and opinions on this particular San Jose game and where you fall with it in terms of effort, in terms of disappointment, in terms of surprise. Where do you sit on this particular game?
Josh, the 20th century Swiss psychiatrist Elisabeth Kubler-Ross introduced the concept of the 5 stages of grief.
Right.
And I think over the course of this season, the LA Galaxy fan base has proceeded through each stage of grief. We've proceeded through denial. Remember when this started, and they hired Kurtanalfo, and even though he's had a losing record with the 2 previous teams, we're like, maybe, I think that, no, I think it could work out. And we just sort of start the season rocky, but maybe we think we're going to turn it around. Then there's anger, where we become frustrated, wrathful, like a dragon on Game of Thrones,
right,
just wanting to take out the world.
Mm-hmm.
Bargaining, when we enter into the early summer stages and we're thinking, maybe if we bring in the right DP, maybe we can swing things around. And if we do this, maybe we'll turn it around, make a late run for the playoffs. Depression, which is where I have been for the past couple of months, really inundating myself, just swimming in the sadness. And yet now, finally, I have reached acceptance.
Right.
And I accept that this season is a lost season. And so I am interested in trying to figure out what are the lessons that we can learn from this season. I think that we can learn a lot. You learn a lot more from your failures than you do from success. I know that to be true. Have you found that to be true as well?
Absolutely. I think that's true. But if this is the case, I mean, if it's the magnitude of your failure gives you the greatest amount of knowledge, then the LA Galaxy win the Supporters Shield by 40 or 50 points next year, right?
Well, I think that there is the opportunity to learn a lot of great lessons and to, those who do not learn from the past are doomed to repeat it, right? So, this game, fantastic learning opportunity, really, when you think about it. Nathan Smith gets a red card.
Yes.
That's so what does that tell us about, of potentially naive defenders in MLS? Maybe they need stalwart veterans to accompany them. Maybe they need older veteran leadership in order to ensure that they don't make hasty and foolish decisions on the field. There's many lessons that one could learn, but what are some of the lessons that you learned from this game?
Well, my first question to you would be, do you think that that Nathan Smith deserved that red card?
I don't know.
Do you even think it's borderline? Like, it could be a yellow, could be a red?
I think calling back the penalty had a bigger impact in terms of the outcome of the game.
Yeah. Well, up to a certain point, I do. I think that I certainly think the LA Galaxy still lose the game if Nathan Smith stays on the field. All right. And so in terms of that, I can agree with you, Wendy, that the penalty kick that Joao Pedro drew and then was subsequently pulled back, which I believe is probably the correct call. All right. So I'm not even going to say that it wasn't a correct VAR use. It was, and they probably got it correct, which seems to be sort of the lesson learned in all of these LA Galaxy VAR calls, of which they are 0 for 5, possibly 0 for 6. That, so far I haven't seen any blatant, ridiculous calls that have gone against the LA Galaxy. For the most part, it seems like they've gotten them right. So I agree with that in changing the game, that the Nathan Smith red card probably didn't change the outcome of the game as much as a penalty kick that could have gotten the LA Galaxy level. Now, if they give that penalty kick and then Nathan Smith gets a red card and then they lose because of that, then maybe you change the importance of those different things. But yeah, I tend to agree with you. I think what we're learning in this second half of the season, and it was a lesson that we knew in the first half of the season as well, is that this roster is poorly constructed and it had no depth. And we knew that from the beginning. But at the same time, I also think that we're also learning that it probably wasn't as much of the coaching as we thought it was. And that this roster just cannot compete in Major League Soccer right now. And I think that's probably the scarier answer than being able to change one person, which was, Kurt Onalfo. You're going to have to change a whole bunch of people and a whole bunch of players and, front office stuff as well, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that I still think Ziggy is a much better coach than Kurt Onalfo, and his record is certainly a lot
no doubt
better.
about that. Nobody's going to argue with you on that. It's not even close. You have one of the winningest coaches in Major League Soccer history is taking over for a guy who has a sub 500 ret. I understand that.
Yeah, but I mean, in terms of this season being, is there any way this season is recoverable? At this point, I don't think so. I don't think that there's anything that we can do. I think that, all I really am interested in is what are we going to do next season? What are we going to do to improve this team? What steps are we going to take? What philosophies are we going to modify? How are we going to approach things differently? Because I don't think there's, I don't know. I mean, what did you think of seeing Giovanni Dos Santos and Jonathan Dos Santos play together? Well, that was the first time, right, that they have actually taken the field together in LA Galaxy uniforms, right?
They did in Portland, but that was, on TV. So they played, and Jonathan Dos Santos came off the bench. So I don't believe it was the start that everybody wanted. So you finally got the starts happening. This was the first, I think, start together, although I'd have to go back and look. But this was the first time in front of my eyes, outside of a television, that I got to see it. And I think that...
What do you think?
I think that they're perfectly adequate, and I think that should probably scare everybody. I do. I mean, listen, I also think that Jonathan Dos Santos, and I know from talking to different people, he's not 100% fit yet, so you're still stretching his fitness, and you just need to keep playing him, and it's one of those things. It just needs to keep happening, and he's going to learn, the guys around him. I do. And I know there's people who disagree, and I question which game they're watching. I do like Joao Pedro and Jonathan Dos Santos together. I have no issues with that whatsoever. In fact, I thought Joao Pedro, and people have been critical of him, saying he can't link passes together and all sorts of things. I think Joao Pedro adds a flair in the center of midfield that the Galaxy desperately need, and I think that he has been a good addition to this club.
I agree. I like Joao Pedro. I've gone from being a Joao Pedro questioner to a Joao Pedro fan. I like him.
Yeah, and so I think that as we're seeing more and more, as him getting more and more comfortable and just him settling with the team and with his youth in mind too, that excites me. So I'm happy with that. And I think his pairing with Jonathan Dos Santos is going to be perfectly what you want. You're going to have...
Yeah, are we really happy with the fact that two of our three DPs, that what we think of when we see them play together is the perfectly adequate Dos Santos brothers?
That's why I said people should be worried. I think that Jonathan Dos Santos is a perfectly adequate player, and for what he probably is going to bring to this team, he's probably DP worthy, but I don't think he's like star DP worthy. And Jared used to bring up the difference between other teams' designated players and the LA Galaxy's designated players, right? And there's this separation because, the LA Galaxy get designated players that are superstars and that, are game changers and are exciting to see. And I don't find anybody outside of Ramon Alessandrini on occasion, Emmanuel Boateng in some instances, but there's nobody on this team right now that is like, appointment viewing. I have to see these guys play because they excite me. It's not like whenever I see Giovinco play for Toronto or David Villa for New York City. That is who the LA Galaxy used to pull in and used to draw, and that's not on this team right now. And Jonathan Dos Santos was never going to be that. Giovanni Dos Santos could be that. And Ramon Alessandrini is fun to watch. I mean, he's absolutely fun to watch. But all of those guys have been struggling lately, Wendy. Nobody is producing. There are no goals being scored for the LA Galaxy, and their leading goal scorer since, I believe, the last time they played Sporting Kansas City, their leading goal scorer is Daniel Steres with 2 goals.
I tell you, we have goal scoring defenders on this team. Dave Romney and Daniel Stairs. I think each of them has a few goals.
Yeah.
So I mean,
yep.
productive backline goal scoring.
Ashley Cole has a goal as well. So
I know.
you could
move those guys up front. Let's see what happens.
I think 8 goals have been scored since the Sporting Kansas City game, and 4 of those goals have come from defenders. All right, and the other ones have been scored from midfielders and not strikers. So
Boy,
actually,
that says something.
That's not true.
It?
That's not true. Ari Lassiter scored a goal, and so that's the one striker goal that has sort of popped up into that.
Wow, though, that is absolutely amazing.
Yes.
What does that say? What does that say?
Did the LA Galaxy need a striker? I think we've been saying that for a while, though, haven't we?
But like, how do all of our strikers manage to be unproductive? That's amazing.
So that's a really interesting, like, super long. We could have a 7-hour podcast just on why are the strikers not scoring, because
but let's not have a 7-hour podcast. Let's
condense. Cliff notes. We need the Cliff notes
version.
version.
Unless you want to like get out a bottle of scotch and just get drunk and just start like waxing poetic about strikers or something like that, because that would just be too depressing.
I think there's something to that, by the way. Maybe we should we think about that for a future show. Just get scotch and drunk and talk about the Galaxy.
See what happens.
Yeah, that's
down.
what happens. But no, I mean, whenever you go into the different things, it's why are the strikers not being? I certainly think it is a lack of talent, and a lack of talent around the strikers as well. I know there are guys who could score goals. I've seen, I've seen Giassi Zardes score goals. I've seen Jack McBean score goals. I've seen Ari Lassiter score goals. I've seen anybody that they put. I've seen Jack McInerney score goals. So there certainly seems to be that there's a lack of talent around that, and that is one of the reasons. I also think it's probably because the LA Galaxy strikers are not scoring goals, just in terms of they're not performing. So it's never one like exact issue, but I think talent on the field. I think Kevin was talking about Landon Donovan. He got to speak to Landon for the Heineken Rivalry Week thing, and they sort of asked, about Giassi Zardes and why is Giassi not scoring goals? And he goes, he scored goals whenever he had somebody like Robbie Keane around him. So it's about the creativity, and I think we've said many times that there is a certain person who knows this team who has said that this team has been constructed horribly. This is a high-level person who would know these things. So, that this team is not put together. They have pieces. Wendy, it's like they have pieces of 17 different puzzles, and they threw them all together, and they said, go ahead and make me a picture. Make me one picture out of these 17 puzzles. And it's like, that's not how this works.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, I do think that what you're ultimately driving at is the architecture of the team and who is the real architect of, who formulated the team, and who, to their credit, maybe brought in a few good pieces,
right,
with Roman Alessandrini and with João Pedro, some good pieces, but then who also made some real missteps. And I do think that the architects would have to be Chris Klein and Pete Vagenas. Hopefully, next season, their judgment will be tempered by more senior judgment from people like Ziggy Schmidt and Dominic Kinnear.
Yeah, I mean that's sort of the really interesting thing now, right? Because let's talk about Dominic Kinnear coming into the LA Galaxy. A little bit of a surprise. Well, okay, first of all, it was the worst kept secret in all of LA Galaxy land for about 3 days. But it was nonetheless something that was ready, and it was something that Kevin and I were ready to talk about on Monday night. And so that's why that podcast was delayed until Tuesday morning, because we were waiting for the announcement to come out. So we knew Dominic Kinnear was coming in. There were lots of questions that Kevin and I raised about Dominic Kinnear coming in. You have a former head coach, Wendy, coming in to be an assistant coach under another coach. How does that work? How does that dynamic work? And I think that if, in terms of before you talk to anybody, and that's certainly how Kevin and I were approaching it, before you talk to anybody, that's a dynamic that you can't easily put to rest, right? You can't simply say, oh, they're going to get along fine, because, head coaches can go be assistant coaches. That works just fine. I mean, all the time, except we know that it doesn't. So I think
a lot of that really depends on who Dominic Kinnear is as a man, in terms of his willingness to let his ego not be the predominant narrative, and to just sort of be like, I'm willing to allow another person's vision to be the guiding vision, whereas I can be a contributing vision.
Right. I mean, listen, here's the funny thing is lots of people were saying that this will never work, right? And they have the perfect example of it working amazingly in Bruce Arena and Dave Sarakin, and it has for like a year. And so, like, it's the perfect example. It's like, you say it doesn't work, and I'm like, oh, really, Bruce and Dave is on his own right could have been and has been a head coach and a successful one at that. Dave Sarakin is an amazing soccer mind and doesn't need to sit there and be under the umbrella of Bruce Arena, but they make it work, and it's beautiful to watch because Bruce can trust Dave with anything he wants, and I think that's kind of what Siggy has here. Now, here's the interesting thing that we sort of learn after we talk to people, and hearing quotes from Dominic Kinnear and Siggy Schmidt is that Siggy asked Dom to come on and, finish out the rest of the season with him and sort of help put some things right. And so you sit there immediately and go, okay, so just for the rest of the season. That makes a little more sense because clearly Dom is probably going to want to do a head coaching job, next year. And not saying that doesn't happen, but Dominic's answer was that he requested from Siggy to stay longer. He goes, if I'm going to come and be an assistant coach, then I want to be here through the whole thing. He goes, I'm not here to start something and then not finish it. And so, and apparently they've talked in the past about about working with each other. And I believe Siggy actually coached Dominic Kinnear at one point as well. So there's actually a pretty good basis here, Wendy, for what seems like could be a really good partnership. And Dominic Kinnear won 2 MLS Cups. Siggy Schmidt has, how many does he have? Does he have 2 or 3?
He has 3 or 4, and he has lots of open cups. Lots of open cups.
Yeah, I mean, so the brain trust that they now have from the coach to the assistant coach is, on terms almost level with Bruce Arena and Dave Sarakin, and that should make LA Galaxy fans, feel a little bit better, understanding the experiences there. Now, I know there's criticism, and Wendy, I think before we even started, you were bringing up criticism of Dominic Kinnear.
Oh, yeah. So before the podcast started, we were briefly discussing this, and I said, well, one common criticism that has been levied against Dominic Kinnear as a coach of the San Jose Earthquakes, formerly the Houston Dynamo and then the San Jose Earthquakes,
right,
was that he's a very pragmatic coach, and the Earthquakes, in terms of style of play among teams in MLS, some people allege that they were just sort of hoof it long, were not tactically interesting, relied too much on brute strength, etc. Which is not to say, that's not a viable approach, but, maybe he's not as limited as all that, and maybe that was an unfair criticism, or maybe it is. And I'm sure that there's fans who I'm sure there is a portion of the fan base that is hostile to the idea of a coach from the San Jose Earthquakes coming to Los Angeles. I'm not one of them. I don't particularly care. But I know, given the relationship between the LA Galaxy and the San Jose Earthquakes, there's going to be some portion of the fan base that is not happy about that.
Yeah, and I can understand that. If that's your thing, sure, you can be upset about it. Go ahead and be that way. But I'll tell you, I feel, the other sort of, I think the criticism is that, Dominic Kinnear is very much MLS 1.0, and that he can't adapt to these new things that are happening in terms of what's going on in MLS 3.0 that we're in right now. But I think the best argument I saw against that is that one of the biggest MLS 1.0 guys, I guess, is Greg Vanney, right? He's a guy who's been around the league forever and who grew up under these systems and still sort of teaches what a lot of people say is sort of an MLS 1.0 system, except it's not, and it's very advanced. But you have like a key MLS 1.0 guy who is doing these very intricate, very detailed sequences. And so just because the guys have been around for a while doesn't mean that they don't know how to coach. And I think that anytime you can get Siggy Schmidt and Dominic Kinnear on the same ticket, it only will be positive. Now, here's the question, though. Let's take this to the next step, Wendy. So you have Dominic Kinnear, you have Siggy Schmidt, all right? You have Pete Vagenas, you have Chris Klein. They are about, okay. Yeah. Okay. So no, here, let's put them all together because they're all have to work together.
All together.
Okay. So
like
they all
the Brady Bunch.
Yeah, that's right. They're all looking sideways at each other in the different boxes. So they're
the different boxes.
That's right.
Ziggy's looking up.
That's right. Ziggy's in the middle.
I think Ziggy is Alice.
Okay, that's good. That's good. And so Pete Vagenas would be Marsha, and then
Pete Vagenas is so Marsha, and no. Pete Vagenas is Marsha, and Chris Klein is Greg.
Okay, good. Okay. What?
Because he's he's like the good-looking dumb jock.
Where is Dominic like Peter? Like,
oh, is Dominic Peter?
See, it's hard to get to once you get the top 3. Now you sort of got those, or Mrs. Brady. I mean, is Dom Mrs. Brady?
I have a feeling that Dom is more Mrs. Brady than he is Greg. For some reason, he seems more Mrs. Brady to me.
Okay. So anyway, we got that. Now that we got that settled, so they're all in the same room, and they're discussing about whether or not to bring in players. Okay, and so clearly, it looks like, and Siggy even hinted at it, that a Von Dom replacement still seems like it could be coming in. I still believe this to be the Michael Ciani deal that supposedly was done. To me right now, I don't know that I make this deal because the timing-wise, what does it help for the rest of the season? You have to be sure that this guy is good enough for the rest of next year for you is the real deal now. So, but anyway, so they're all in there. So who gets to overrule who? Wendy, we know that Pete Vagenas is the general manager, so technically he should have...
I hope everyone gets to overrule Pete Vagenas. That's what I hope. I hope everyone gets to overrule Pete Vagenas, who, from what I hear, is not qualified, not competent, not prepared, not professional. So whatever, I hope that Ziggy and Dominic collectively decide, like, listen, Pete, yeah, okay, we got it. You're in charge. And then quietly they just go off into a hallway and like, so we're not listening to him, right?
Right.
Yeah, we're not listening.
Like I want it to be a vote. I want it to be a vote, and then every time they vote, like it's just Pete with his hand up, and everybody else is like, no.
What if the LA Galaxy was like Survivor, and every week they voted someone who works for the LA Galaxy behind the scenes off the island? Well, and they're just like, we're voting you off the team.
Well, Yella Von Dom did get voted off the island apparently, so and that's and who knows how that? Yeah, he took himself out.
I'm gonna miss him.
You should. He was. And I will.
He was a character. I like characters.
I will allow LA Galaxy fans this. Remember him from last year. All right, don't pay any attention to this year. Remember him from last year and how much fun he was to watch, and how much entertainment he brought.
And he had such a big personality and such a great sense of humor. So I think we should all just view him as positively as possible, and just. I am going to miss him. I really am.
Because he was absolutely atrocious this year, and anybody who says differently did not watch the games. He was a key contributor to several losses this year, which is again, unfortunate. And the situation he was in his mental space, who knows? But anyway, so back to these guys. Yes, I was going to say Survivor, by the way. You literally picked that like right out of my brain.
Did I really?
Oh, yeah. I was like, well, this is like Survivor. So like,
and then we're going to go in Tribal Council, and we're going to vote Pete Vagenas off the LA Galaxy.
Well, that's the whole thing now, is you go to this place where you have two guys, Dominic Kinnear and Siggy Schmidt, with all the experience that they have in seeing players. I mean, Siggy Schmidt has been evaluating talent in Southern California since before I was born, and since starting in the 1980s and probably before that.
Literally.
So you have this thing, and then you have Dominic Kinnear, who is an experienced professional coach who knows players and can see. I imagine the evaluation of talent that those guys have is far outweighs anything that Pete Vagenas could bring to the table, and just their experience in the league far outweighs that. So, I mean, where's the balance of power now? Are you going to tell me that Pete Vagenas is going to be able to overrule, which by a general manager's general outlook, he should be able to overrule Siggy and Dom? Are you going to tell me that happens? Because that's not happening. I
hope that's not happening.
Listen, there's no way it could happen. But if that happens, I wouldn't expect for Siggy Schmidt and Dominic Kinnear to be here next year, if that's the case. Because I couldn't see a situation or a scenario where that ever happens. But anyway, I mean, this is all part of building the team, Wendy, that is going to have to take place. And this is why bringing in Dominic Kinnear now, getting Siggy Schmidt set now, and if you're going to make any changes in terms of personnel on the field or in the front office, you do it now, because everything is ramping up. You now have, X number of months before the 2018 season starts. You have X number of months before that January transfer window opens, and you're able to go out and get people, and you need to start talking to people and players and agents now.
Wait. This January transfer window opens? Is that when it opens?
Yeah, I believe it's January.
Oh my gosh, that's such a long time.
Yes, it is. It is before the season technically starts, because usually the teams don't report until like the end of January. So it's right around that time.
I thought it was December.
No. I don't think so. At least not in my head. In my mind, I'm trying to remember when players have come in and when I've gotten press releases. So I can look it up.
I just remember we traded Omar and Juninho in December.
Maybe it opens way in front of that. I'll look it up while we're
All right.
So, but anyway, I mean, so these are the things that you're having to do right now and plan right now for the LA Galaxy and for 2018. And so all of these things, bringing in Dominic Kinnear to me was a great move. If you can keep everybody happy there, I think it's wonderful. And I don't think some people, and Kevin and I, even were theorizing about this on Monday because we just hadn't talked to anybody yet. So you're just throwing stuff against the wall sort of to see what sticks. But, is Dominic Kinnear the coach in waiting? Is Siggy not going to stay for the next year? And that doesn't seem to be the case from everybody's comments.
Aw, Winnie the Pooh.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if you lose Siggy, if you lose Dominic Kinnear, in my opinion, and you brought these guys...
You lose all the Winnie the Pooh qualities of the team go away immediately.
Not only that, but you are saying that something else is wrong with the LA Galaxy, which they're very well.
Yeah, because you're saying that some dope like Pete Vagenas, who's never actually won anything or had a job outside of being a lackey to Chris Klein, somehow he should have more gravitas within a multi-million-dollar organization than two people who have decades of experience and success.
Yeah, and so I think that, that's going to show the structural sort of issues, if there are any. And yes, there are. We know there are structural issues within the front office, and that we'll see whether or not anything gets addressed in the offseason. But I mean, that's sort of, this is going to be sort of maybe your canary in the coal mine. You got to sort of keep your eye on how happy Siggy and Dominic are being coaches as we go through the rest of this year and then into the offseason as well. So I think that's really interesting. The Dominic Kinnear thing is I think a great pickup. And I don't know that it's going to have any effect on this year, and I don't know that it can because of the personnel issues that I think the Galaxy have. But at the same time,
we have to get some new players.
Yeah,
we must get some new players.
And in this particular game, you had an injury and a season-ending injury to Pele Van Aanholt, a torn ACL.
They love getting players with histories of tears to ACLs. That's their favorite thing to do.
So torn ACL, torn meniscus. This is a guy who now we'll sort of see how it goes. This is a guy who's on a 6-month contract, Wendy. This is a guy who had an option for a year extension after this. This is a guy who everybody in the LA Galaxy organization, from everybody I talked to, was very high on, really liked him coming in and just doing his job. And he was an answer at the right back position where you didn't have to worry about it. It was, yes, like any defender, you're going to get beat. But for the most part, he went in there, he did his job, and he stopped us from worrying about what was happening on that right side of defense.
Yeah, but he's got another torn ACL now.
Well, and this is the thing. I mean, if you're the LA Galaxy, he was on a 6-month contract. So basically you had him until the end of this year. And then you had an option for another year. He's not going to be back until what they say is late spring. So late spring is already into the season. If you're the LA Galaxy, do you really want to start another season down a right back? And so no, you wouldn't. So you can't listen. As much as Pele Van Aanholt is an amazing kid, and he seems like he's great, and he's a kid to me because he's 26 years old and I'm 36, so he's 10 years younger than me. But as he goes, you have to let him go, and so you're not going to renew his contract. I mean, that's unless they know something amazing about that I don't know. You can't do that. So it's not like they're leaving him out in the cold. They still have to pay for his recovery. There's all the stuff. So he will still get better and do the whole thing. And that's sort of how it's going to go. And so that's unfortunate for him because it really was. I think he could have done really well in Major League Soccer, and I don't think he's going to have that chance. Going forward now. So that's a huge deal. That means now that a position that was quote unquote solved is unsolved now, which means the LA Galaxy will be shopping for another right back, which means they're probably shopping for a center back, despite the fact that I like Daniel Steres and Dave Romney. I think they're going to bring in this Michael Ciani, so they're going to bring in a center back. They're going to need to bring in a left back in the offseason because we know Ashley Cole is gone. They're going to need to bring in a striker. Are they going to upgrade at keeper? I mean, it used to be, you had at least the right back was checked off there, Wendy. That's not the case anymore.
No, we're going to need a lot of players, and God knows, I can't imagine what the team is going to look like. It's going to be almost a completely unrecognizable team.
Yeah, and luckily our chat room is on top of things as well. The winter transfer window opens the first day of the new year and closes on the last day of January. So stuff kind of gets done before that, but I don't think they can announce it. So maybe that's the case. And Mexico could have a different transfer window, and so that's the other thing that you sort of whatever it is, however it happens. So anyway. So that's sort of, I mean, we're sort of talking about San Jose on the periphery here. There was, we talked about, a whole bunch of things. We talked about the strikers not scoring. This LA Galaxy team is now 354 minutes scoreless. All right,
Oh God.
they have 1 goal and 10 against them since Siggy Schmidt started over. So they're getting outscored 10-1 in their 5 games with Siggy Schmidt.
Oh my God.
2 of those games were down a man, whatever perspective you want to put that into. So you can look at it that way. If we go into other scoreless things, I want to put everything in perspective. I'm going to not try to pick on Giassi's artist, but I'm going to give you the facts surrounding his scoreless streak, which now sits at 1,529 minutes, and that's 17 games. All right. So,
Oh my God.
yeah, it's a lot. Okay, Roman Alessandrini hasn't scored since June 21st, just in case you were wondering where he was at. Giovanni Dos Santos hasn't scored since May 27th. All right? So you're talking about your main primary goal scorers, and Roman Alessandrini, Giovanni Dos Santos, and Giassi Zardes. None of them have scored in recent memory. You have to go back to the win over Colorado, which is a nice little foreshadowing of the LA Galaxy playing Colorado Rapids this weekend. You have to go back to that win against Colorado before Roman Alessandrini scores, and then the game before that, it was Giovanni Dos Santos, which was hysterical because, Wendy, I saw the LA Galaxy's the last time Giovanni Dos Santos scored goals, which was when the LA Galaxy beat the San Jose Earthquakes 4-2. And that's how long ago it was since Giovanni Dos Santos has scored goals. So,
I think we should do a podcast where we all get drunk.
this is, I mean, you go through all these things, and, Zardes hasn't scored in over a year. We know that. The LA Galaxy haven't won a home game since, forever. All these things. You go to home points, Wendy. Home points for the LA. I went through, and if you follow us on Instagram at Galaxy Podcast on Instagram. If you follow us on Instagram, then you know that I tweeted out my little chart, my little research chart of MLS home points. So across the entire league, I tallied everybody's home points. So the very best in the league is Toronto FC. They're 10-0-3 at home, and they have 33 points. Okay, so at home. The very worst in the league is the LA Galaxy. They have 1 win at home. They have 4 draws. That gives them 7 points. So they have 7 points. Toronto FC have 33 points. But here's the crazy thing. DC United is the second worst home team. They are 11 points in front of the LA Galaxy right now. 11. So even DC United has 18 home points. The LA Galaxy have 7 home points. I don't even know. It's tough to put it into perspective. I'll tell you this, and people have asked, could the LA Galaxy set a record for the least amount of points at home and the least amount of wins at home? And the answer is absolutely yes right now. 2001 Tampa Bay Mutiny. This team folded after this, by the way. This was part of the contraction of the league in Major League Soccer, Wendy. But in 2001, the Tampa Bay Mutiny finished with 8 points, a 2-10-2 record at home for those 8 points. All right? So the LA Galaxy need to win another game.
Pro-rel for USA. Pro-rel. Pro-rel.
Yeah.
Let's relegate the LA Galaxy.
They would have already been relegated technically in
We would be
2007,
so
2008.
If there was pro-rel in the US, the LA Galaxy would be so relegated this season.
They would be down in Division 3. They wouldn't even allow them to stay in 2 right now.
We wouldn't be allowed to the championship. We would go down to League 1.
Yeah, and so I think everybody knows Colorado's the only thing, the only cushion, the only mattress between the LA Galaxy and the floor, or the wooden spoon, as they call it, finishing worse than the league. Minnesota United, an expansion team, is right now currently above the LA Galaxy. Atlanta United is 11th in the league right now as an expansion team. So 2 expansion teams, the teams that technically, quote-unquote, did not have players before this year. Although Minnesota United certainly was an NASL team before this, so you understand that. But 2 of those teams that didn't have players did better than the LA Galaxy right now, anyway, as we finish the last 9 games.
I wonder how AEG feels about the cost-cutting plan. I wonder how they feel how that has panned out. Do you think, given the loss, in terms of lost revenue, lost goodwill, lost prestige, damaged tarnishment to branding, in terms of all those things, I wonder in retrospect why if they would ever consider doing that again, implementing this cost-cutting thing where they hire these dumb guys to run things. I wonder if they would do that again, given that, you essentially are playing Russian roulette with your most valuable assets. I just wonder if it's something that they should have done or if they should continue to do it.
Yeah, here's the interesting thing. I think that there's already been a turnaround that. I don't think you get Dominic Kinnear and Siggy Schmidt cheap. Just off the top of my head, I don't believe that happens. I don't know if it's Bruce Arena, Dave Sarakin level, but it could be in that general range because these are two head coaches again. Siggy Schmidt is a well-known, very good head coach. You probably got him at a discount because he's from Southern California. You could just, and he wanted to stay. So maybe you got a little, a 10% discount, a little kicker. Maybe they had a coupon. Don't know. So you had that. And then Dominic Kinnear is a head coach. He was a head coach without a job. But I think if Dom sticks around, that he gets a head coaching job probably next year if he wants it. So between those two things, you look at how it goes. I think that at least in the coaching staff-wise, that they maybe have made a little bit of a change. They also just recently hired a new director of sports performance, so a health guy. So this is a guy who's working on nutrition, peak performance, all sorts of stuff. And his name is Pierre Barou. He's the new director of sports performance. He's a former U.S. men's national team strength and conditioning coach, and he joins the LA Galaxy staff. I can't imagine that a former U.S. men's national team, health and fitness coach is going to come cheap as well. I don't think, just laying out another $2 million for Jonathan Dos Santos, is it under what they were paying for Robbie Keane and Steven Gerrard? Absolutely. So, I mean, there is a downtick, and we're going to get to see all the salaries again as it comes out, so we'll sort of be able to compare those teams again as the union. Actually, that should be coming out here pretty soon. Maybe they do it after the roster freeze deadline, I think on September 12th or 15th. It's one of those where it'll come out, and we'll be able to see the salaries again, and so we'll be able to calculate what the LA Galaxy have in terms of their financial hit to the roster this year, all those things. So you'll get to see some salaries that maybe you didn't see at the beginning. Certainly Jonathan Dos Santos, which we know is around, we think $2.2 million. So you do all this. I have to think that they have already made a course correction on that particular item, at least in my mind, Wendy. I don't know if you think that, Siggy Schmidt and Dominic Kinnear are coming in on the cheap.
They're both huge steps up over what it was. I just wonder if the Galaxy is going to, because the Galaxy historically have been known as a team that really splashes the cash in order to bring attention, prestige to the league, to bring in named players. And I wonder if that's a philosophy they've completely abandoned, or if it's something that they're trying to modify, or if, they're going to continue to stick with the idea of trying to just get cheaper players. I have no idea what their plan is for the future. I just wonder, in retrospect, if they would ever pursue this, path again. Because I know that you said that they did it with the Kings, and maybe it worked out better with the Kings than it did with the Galaxy.
That's new with the Kings. That's new with the Kings. So they just did that in the offseason, which was sort of clean house with general manager, and I think, somebody else maybe at the team, maybe it was president, and so they promoted within, just like they did with the Galaxy. So we'll see. I think that's coming up, so you'll be able to see some of the results of that. I don't think I wonder if they think it's a good idea and it just wasn't implemented correctly, or if it was a bad idea.
Just a bad idea, right? And I have no idea.
And I don't know the answer to that. I mean, even sitting here.
Well, okay. I mean, here's my philosophy on it: is that the Chris Klein hiring two good friends of his to be the GM and general head coach of the team. I think that the statistical improbability of two people who you happen to be good friends with, also coincidentally happening to be the most qualified people for the team, for the positions for which you're hiring. I think those are such remote statistical possibilities that it doesn't follow from logic that he's actually hiring people who are best equipped for the job, best qualified for the job. And if you accept that as the logical and reasonable conclusion of what happened, then you have to, say, okay, well, so he's not hiring people because they're good, qualified, capable, records of success, educated, certified, et cetera. He's just hiring people based on a personal relationship and maybe a sense that maybe they will be good, and he wants them to be good, and he wants them to succeed. But for me, from my perspective and basic working in totally different industries, not working in soccer, just working in different industries, working in finance and law enforcement and government and politics, it makes sense to hire people who are the best at what they do. That's just, and disregarding whether you are friends with them.
Here's my argument, and it's a very weak argument. So but I'm going to give you sort of a devil's advocate look at that. I will tell you that within Major League Soccer, it would be difficult for Chris Klein to hire somebody who's probably not his friend. some of these guys have been
'Cause
around.
he's that nice.
Well,
He's that likable.
that is one of he is a very likable man. He's very nice.
Can I ask you a hypothetical question?
Yes.
Let's play thought experiment. I'm really interested in this. Okay.
Okay, go.
Imagine Chris Klein.
Right.
Okay. Imagine that Chris Klein does not have unbelievably great looks, that he doesn't have a big bright smile, that he doesn't have an amazing tan, that he doesn't make really good eye contact when he looks at people, that he doesn't dress really well, that he doesn't have a really cute family, that he's not Christian, that he's not conservative, and he doesn't share the same value system as Phil Ann Schultz. Imagine that he isn't a really seemingly sweet and sincere guy. Is there any chance that he would have the job that he has?
Yeah, I still think there's a chance. I know you find that. Well, first of all, I don't think that if he was a complete a-hole, that he would be able to do the job that he has there. So I think that's might even be a prerequisite. Most of the LA Galaxy presidents that I have talked to have all been very personable people over the years. So I think that might be a prerequisite, but we'll throw it away. Here is why he has a chance to, because he was one of these guys who was always sort of looking out and for his career after playing. And even whenever he was with the LA Galaxy, Chris would talk about how he was going to school and how he would take these business courses. And I don't know his exact degree of education. Maybe next time he's in here, I can even ask him. But you go through that. He was one of these guys who was going to go into like sort of the financial management for players after he was done, and that was going to be his job afterwards. In fact, he had told a bunch of people that, I believe, whenever it happened, and the LA Galaxy offered him a position, realizing that it was, sort of this bright guy who's up and coming, and maybe let's see how he sort of fits in. So and with his soccer knowledge, with his want and need and his learning ability for the financial systems. I mean, am I saying did they promote him to LA Galaxy president right away? No, and that shouldn't have happened. But I still think that there are reasons why Chris Klein is LA Galaxy president. Now, do I think?
Here's something to me. Chris Klein to me seems to be someone who presents very well. Like he is extremely likable. Like I've seen how he interacts with people versus, for example, how Pete Vagenas interacts with people. Chris Klein is extremely likable and sincere. And it seems like he has the best wishes for the LA Galaxy and cares about the team and wants to do a good job and has a good work ethic. And from those perspectives, he also is someone who presents really well. He is someone who's really good looking and really likable and charming.
Right.
And so, I mean, when I think about the ways in which we really are a biased society, I know we all like to speculate, we're a racist society, we're a sexist society. In reality, let's be real. I mean, we're all completely overwhelmingly biased in favor of people who are great looking and, are very prejudiced. We really are. And so I just wonder if we are persuaded to believing that he is qualified and capable to some degree because he is extremely attractive and personable. And he is the type of person who, if he came to your organization, you would say to yourself, I really want this person to be an enormous success. I really want him to be great. I want him to be qualified. I want him to do a good job. I want him to be competent. I want him to be insightful, intelligent, capable. I want him to have insight. I want him to have success. He's the type of person for whom you want success, and the type of person for whom probably the world is always going to bestow unintended benefits upon him because he has so many natural gifts. And yet I just want to, as much as possible, divorce myself from, preconceived biases, which human beings are so susceptible to because we are creatures who are so persuaded by, vision, by images, by, the sense that we get from people when we think they are warm and kind and, good-hearted people, because we all want him to do well. I wish that I had a better sense of whether he is actually someone who has good ideas, who is someone who really understands business, management, the way that I know Bruce Arena did.
I mean, but there's even an argument. Yes, Bruce Arena certainly proved that he was a good guy in terms of understanding sort of the business and the manager. But Bruce Arena is a guy who got all that through just straight up experience and doing stuff. I mean, Bruce would tell you he wasn't a very good student. Bruce would tell you that he doesn't consider him a very smart guy in terms of like the general sort of knowledge. But whenever it comes to sports knowledge and, lacrosse and soccer, Bruce is, one of those geniuses, and he just sees it. And you certainly got that from him. I think that they're different types of people, clearly. Bruce is a soccer coach, and he always will be. I mean, you could get Bruce to be a general manager, but if you bring in Bruce to be a general manager, it's sort of like having Phil Jackson be a general manager, you know that he's going to want to be a coach. And you know that the coaching part of him is still going to sort of stick in there, and he's going to give you the players, and then whenever you screw it up, he's going to be like, well, I could have, he knows in the back of his mind he could have handled it. But I just think they're two completely different people in terms of that, and I don't know whether one is better than the other. I will tell you that in a lot of ways, whenever I look at this season and the failures of the season, I look at the team construction and how that was constructed. And so there's three people who are in charge of, team construction for me, and that's Dan Beckerman at AEG, that's Chris Klein, and that's Pete Vagenas. All right. Now, general managers, for whatever reason, usually get a couple coaches, which scares me. All right. I do not think that on the GM side of things that things have gone anywhere near what the LA Galaxy have said. So I'll put the hat on you for a second, Wendy. You're Dan Beckerman. You're wearing the AEG president hat. What do you do, starting fairly soon for this LA Galaxy team who could finish, last in the league and who has the chance to be the worst LA Galaxy team, and they currently are the worst LA Galaxy team ever in the club history?
In terms of management changes?
In terms of management changes, yep.
Oh, I'd fire Pete Vagenas.
Okay, so Pete would be gone. Would you keep Chris Klein?
Maybe. I mean, see, the thing is that Chris Klein was successful when Bruce Arena was there. Like, everyone, loved him because he was, like I said, he has these presentational components which are, superficial in one way, but in another way, maybe that's a really integral component of being a president, which is that you are this pleasant, likable, in all ways sort of acceptable to the outer world in the sort of vanilla way. You are friendly to fans. You give a good interview.
Right.
When you meet people, they like you. But if he doesn't have, I really want to be respectful. If he lacks what in my profession we would just call the bandwidth, he doesn't have the bandwidth, which means he really just doesn't have what Bruce Arena had, which was he has a huge facility for really understanding people, business, management, and other concepts, frankly, that you have to understand. And I just hope to God that Dan Beckerman is doing that part of the job. All those really functional things that you would need to have an MBA to do. If he could have someone like Bruce Arena, then I think, he could be successful because he is, in all respects, a perfectly likable, appropriate, genial, friendly, good-looking, fine public face.
Yeah.
He's a fine public face of an organization. But is he really going to be your brain trust? Is he going to be the person who is supposed to have incredible insight into, developing the most potential in a human being to be the best athlete that they can? Is that who he is? Or is he really just like someone who's a really acceptable face, who's just a really positive public image? I mean, if people make a lot of jokes about the Los Angeles and the city that it is and the values that it represents in terms of it not being a city for people of substance. That hasn't really been my experience because there's so many people here who are creative, energetic, intelligent, educated, who have a lot of ideas, visions. There's a lot of fields in Los Angeles that require inspiration. And I just wonder if Chris Klein could find himself someone who would be a good partner for a front office position, then I think that could work. But I don't think that's Pete Vagenas. I think it should be someone who has different skill sets. I think it should be someone who with a different background. I don't think he should hire someone who's his compatriot, who's his friend. I think that he should have someone who's more experienced and as maybe not so great looking, and that's, who doesn't have to be the public face. Maybe someone who is, less of sort of a, good public just sort of, someone who's just like a presentational component to the team.
You would think that, and I'll sort of give you, some personal experience in dealing with the team and the club and all that stuff. This season has been horrible, as everybody can attest to. I will tell you that it's been horrible within the club as well. There's nobody who's happy. There's nobody who's happy with the performance, that's there. And you have people who have to do their jobs amidst people constantly screaming and yelling at them like fans. And you're right. I'm not criticizing. I'm just saying, it's tough. If you had to go to work every day and have people scream at you, you would not enjoy it too. And so it's, obviously you look at the morale and things that go around. So I have heard lots of things about lots of people. All right. There are lots of people who aren't happy. There are lots of people who are angry at this person and all that stuff. And you would expect some of that. And I always have to run it through a filter of, this is a really bad year. Is this really a thing, or is it just a thing because everybody's losing? Right. And so I will tell you that I haven't heard, and not once, one single bad word about Chris Klein during the whole thing. Now, whether that's nobody wants to badmouth the boss, that certainly could be the case. But I heard plenty of people badmouth their bosses when they've been talking to me. And I've heard plenty of things in all that way. So I will tell you that at least internally, a lot of people feel like Chris Klein is still a good president. All right. And if that's the case, if he's able to motivate those people, if you talk to the players and they still think he's a guy who is doing the right thing. And so far, I haven't heard that he's a guy who's doing the wrong thing in terms of, how he's going about things. So,
yeah, I think that he could be going about things well, but if he is also the human resources manager in terms of making the decision of who to hire,
right.
Is he doing a good job in that respect?
That's the question. And that's always, you have to look at it. Ultimately, you always say, the buck stops at the top, right? It used to be the buck stopped with Bruce. He was always that guy. Well, Chris Klein's that guy right now. Even though Dan Beckerman sits above him, eventually Dan could decide that Chris isn't doing his job and obviously end that. But otherwise, Chris Klein is the guy who decides whether or not people are doing their jobs. And so,
do you think, I don't know Chris Klein. I really don't. I've seen him in person a few times. I know when we did the 5K, I was standing right next to him. He was honestly really receptive and polite and kind to fans who were coming up to him, even though we suck. And I'm sure
right.
He gets so much stick from fans.
Yes.
But do you think that he is someone who has the bandwidth to do the job really well? Do you think he has not just the presentational components, the likability and stuff like that, which I know are important and necessary? Do you think that he has the mind? Do you think he has the breadth? Do you think he has the vision? Do you think he has what it takes to be a leader beyond just being a nice, friendly guy
right.
who's the public face of the team?
Yeah, I will say this. I think it's an interesting question, and I'm not trying to dodge it. It's something that now I really want to sit and think about because you raise a lot of points. I'm going to give you an answer. But I want you to know my answer could change.
There is no answer. I don't know them.
Yeah.
And part of what I'm saying is just based on speculation, based on my own experience working in business, which is that there's a lot of different types of personalities in business and people who succeed. And it has been my experience where there's, a lot of people have, facility for some things and they're great at some things, but they have deficits in other areas. And maybe one of the best things that you could be as a manager is someone who recognizes the strengths and deficits that different people bring to the job. And that it's a wonderful thing to be able to extract from people their best qualities, to allow them to show their best qualities within their professional life. And so if Chris Klein is someone who has genuine potential to be a great club president, then I would love to see that. Yeah. I don't know if he is, if that's who he is, if he has that potential or if he doesn't, because I don't know him personally. I only know what he says publicly. And from that, I have to conclude that he either doesn't have the bandwidth and doesn't have potential to, be a really good president because he doesn't have genuine self-insight into his own actions or what the team is doing. Or if he's doing that in terms of saving public face, saying things which are, intentionally obscure or obtuse, or saying things which, because, when you say things like, well, the season's tough, international absences are tough, injuries are tough, stuff like that, it's just to me, it doesn't mean anything. It doesn't say anything. You're not demonstrating that you understand what's happening. You're not helping your fans who care about the team and want to believe that there's something else to look forward to. I'm trying to figure out, who is he? Is he someone who has genuine ability to do this job and he just needs to partner himself with different people? Or is he someone who literally got a job because he's just a really good looking, nice guy?
No, I certainly I don't think that that's the case, and it's not. He didn't get the job just because there's plenty of nice-looking people who have played soccer and who have done things around soccer that should never be anywhere near a front office, and that's not Chris. I've met some amazingly beautiful people in my time covering the LA Galaxy, and I will tell you
The
that
LA Galaxy is such a beautiful team.
they are, and I will tell you that most of them couldn't think their ways out of a blanket.
Oh, poor guys.
Hey, sometimes it's single-minded stuff that you just want. Just think about soccer, play soccer. That's all you need to think about. Don't try to solve the problems of the world, right? I mean, and that's not Chris. Chris is not that guy. He's not the one-dimensional guy. I think some of the smartest people I've ever met in soccer are obviously Bruce Arena, but that's a different intelligence. Dave Sarakin is an extremely knowledgeable guy, unbelievable. Like, Tim Leiweke is the genius, and he's but he comes with genius trappings too. I mean, he's loud, and he's the salesman, and he can sort of switch directions very quickly, and he's always thinking, but that always thinking means he never turns off too, and sometimes you need an off switch for guys, right? I think Tim Leiweke is the guy who, if you're going to do anything for any reason, Tim Leiweke is the guy you want in charge of anything. And it doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be sports related. It's whatever you want to do. Tim is that kind of bandwidth guy, right? And so you could literally say, hey, Tim, we're building a stadium. Oh, yeah, I got this. Let me help you out. So this is what you want to do. And he'll go, and he's the guy who just has endless bandwidth and can solve problems and doesn't see anything as a problem. He's probably the smartest person around that the LA Galaxy have ever had around them, right? Quite honestly, because he couldn't turn off and he couldn't stop doing deals, is probably why he's no longer with AEG.
Because of the whole NFL stadium thing.
Right. So you got all that. So, I mean, you look at Tim Leiweke. I mean, Chris Klein is not that guy. He's not Tim Leiweke, but nobody is. I mean, you're sort of like, oh, who are you going to get to replace David Beckham? Oh, that's right. There is no replacement for David Beckham. Who are you going to get to replace Landon Donovan? Oh, there is no replacement. So you can't replace him. But I think that Chris Klein understands the business of soccer, understands the organization in terms of how it is run and how he needs to run it. And I think that this year is a learning opportunity for him, and you certainly already talked about that in terms of how this went. I think that anything you hear publicly from a club like the LA Galaxy is always going to be put through a PR filter. I will say I don't think that there's any doubt in my mind that Chris Klein isn't sitting there going, we suck. How do we not suck? How do we fix this? We need to fix this. And these are my ideas.
How do we stop the sucking?
How do we stop the constant suck? Right? That's basically where you're at. But I don't think that there's anybody within the organization that is like sitting there with their feet up on their desk going, God, this year just wonderful. So anytime you hear anything public, and that even goes anything, talking to me, I always think it's put through the PR filter. So you're going to get more vague answers and different things. Some things you can't talk about. Some things are player issues that you don't want to throw players under the bus. People find out you throw players under the bus, and next thing you know, players don't want to come to you because they heard that you threw this player under the bus and different things. So there's certain things that are never going to be said that we can certainly talk about, one day whenever I'm dead.
Should I not have said that I would fire Pete Vagenas? I'm never going to be inside this man world anyway, so it doesn't really matter.
No, it doesn't. Listen, I keep having to say this. I don't like calling for people's jobs, but if you're going to have the worst LA Galaxy team, then you're going to have to make corrections and adjustments, and that means people are going to get fired. That means players are going to lose their positions. That means people in the front office are going to lose their positions. Things have to be adjusted. You can't have a season like this and not have severe repercussions. And I just hope that is the same mindset that everybody else has, and that Dan Beckerman, who's in charge of running this whole thing, that's the mindset he has as well. Because if he's waiting to pull triggers on things, then he's waiting too long. We're at that time. But
but see, I think that sports are very tribal, and a lot of people don't really have that viewpoint. A lot of people think, a lot of people from professional sports, because they have a professional sports background, they have a team mentality, which is that whatever your team is doing, you have to support them. You can't question them. You have to defend them against what outsiders say. Right. And that is sort of like closing ranks, the idea of closing ranks against outside views and just deflecting outside opinions. And I think that is, in some ways that reflects some nice noble characteristics, but in terms of solving problems,
Yeah, it doesn't help.
Yeah.
I will say this. I disagree a little bit with it. I think certainly at some levels and, outside of once major money starts getting into play, Wendy, I think that goes away a lot more because we see it in professional sports that guys get thrown under the bus, get fired quickly. All these sort of things happen whenever there's big money on the line. And right now with AEG, there's big money on the line. Obviously, there's money on the line in the fact that this season didn't go the way it was supposed to. There's money on the line in the fact that they're going to be competing with another team, in downtown Los Angeles. Is having the nice new shiny stadium, LAFC. So you know that they have an issue with the fact that there's big money on the line and that right now they're losing that battle. And the tug of war is slanted way over in one direction right now. And that's for a team that doesn't even have a team, they don't even have players. They have, a couple players here or there. That's where you're at right now. So that's the interesting sort of thing right now is that they know something's wrong. Everybody does. And if you think that the Galaxy in the front office don't think that everything's, don't think that there's something majorly wrong with this team, then you're out of your mind. Because I will tell you that they know that there's something wrong and they're going to try their darndest to fix it. And that's where they're at right now. I think that's the transition that they're at. And granted, they're not going to say, and why, this is almost like whenever Jurgen Klinsmann said, that the United States won't win the World Cup. Right? It's like the Galaxy aren't going to say that they're not going to make the playoffs until there's no possible chance for them to make the playoffs. And that's just, and if they did, people would probably criticize them. All right.
Well, listen, one thing that I've learned from doing this podcast is that you and I, especially I, are going to get criticized no matter what we say. So we might as well just say what we think because there's no way to avoid criticism. So you might as well just be who you really are.
And I agree with that. And I got accused of being blind yesterday. So yeah, it happens constantly. It's fine. I told that person, by the way, who said that they were talking about Dave Romney and Dan Steres, and I still am a believer that those two could be a center back pairing of the future. And people disagree with me. That's fine. I don't really care. You can disagree with me all you want. I'm telling you what I see and what I think. This has nothing to do with, maybe you see something completely different. That's cool. We're all good. But they accused me of being blind, and I said, no, that's not correct because one, I just had an eye checkup 2020, so I'm good. And
my optometrist would disagree with you, sir.
Yep. Dr. Shebel would say that that I see just fine. And I had laser eye surgery, years ago to enhance that vision. So I have very good vision, and I know that. So I'm not blind, but I appreciate the concern over that. Anyway, okay, so these are all the things, and I think we've talked about a lot of the stuff that is going to be coming up here in these next closing weeks. You have 9 games left. LA Galaxy are not physically, or at least not mathematically eliminated. They're physically eliminated from the playoffs. They're not mathematically eliminated from the playoffs yet, although their chances right now are less than 1%. So just to give you an idea, yes, send me all the. So you're saying there's a chance of gifts you want? Just send them on over. I've seen them already. All right, the season is over. It's about now is a very important time for the Galaxy, though. They need to figure out what pieces are going to stay and what pieces are going to go. If you can start developing chemistry down this stretch, that's going to help you next year. So it's not about, there's not nothing to play for. There's actually very important things to play for. And I think the LA Galaxy need to take that mentality. Plus, they need to take the mentality of, and you hate to be these people, but they need to take the mentality of the spoilers, and they need to spoil things, and they need to ruin things, and they need to look at Toronto FC coming to play the LA Galaxy as, their MLS Cup and their chance to take down the big guys and their chance to ruin things for TFC on the road, so all these things. So that's sort of where we're at now. Let's get to just a little bit of LA Galaxy news, Wendy, and then we're going to move on and talk about this Colorado game and let everybody get out of here, all right?
Okay.
All right. Roman Alessandrini and his girlfriend have announced they have a baby girl. So baby Naomi and the mom both are healthy. Everything is fine. Roman Alessandrini, who missed the San Jose game, and apparently it was sort of a late scratch. Although we heard, I think at one point it was Sunday that was sort of the scratch. I think this all started on Friday and it continued and went all the way through. And I think that the baby was finally born on Tuesday or Wednesday. So it sounds like there was some false labor involved, and I don't know the details, so I'm not going to speculate. But throughout that poor woman, it took her. She basically thinks she's going to the hospital on Friday to have a baby, and she doesn't have the baby until Wednesday. That sounds like a horrible time. And so I tip my hat to her. And people, I think
worse than the San Jose game.
Oh, way worse. That's exactly. And Roman Alessandrini absolutely did the right thing. As far as I'm concerned, go be with your girlfriend, be with your baby. That's what you're supposed to be doing. There's a time for soccer. There's a time for real life.
Baby Naomi.
Yeah, that's absolutely possibly. And Wendy, I should point out, baby Naomi possible U.S. women's national team player.
Hello. I mean, where's the real soccer talent in this country? With the ladies.
With the ladies.
Let's be real. Let's be real. Okay.
So Naomi Alessandrini, a possibility there of being a future U.S. men's national team. Women's national. No, you know what? She's going to be
2052.
No, she's going to be she's going to be so good she plays with the men. All right, so that's U.S. men's national team. After I slipped there, I had to save that somehow. Other LA Galaxy news. We're staying on the girls' track. Let's do that real quick. LA Galaxy Girls Academy starts play for the very first time this Saturday. So Saturday, as you're headed to the LA Galaxy game, there is a 10 a.m., a 12 p.m., a 2:30 p.m., and a 5 p.m. LA Galaxy Girls Academy game at StubHub Center, field number 7. The U14s, U15s, U16s, and U18s are all there. And they will be playing their very first games if you wanted to go to that. If you show up to the game early, that 5 p.m. game is you can almost make. You know, do the 5, watch a little girls U18, U19 LA Galaxy Academy game, and then head on in to see the Colorado game at 8 p.m. So anyway, that's just interesting stuff I wanted to throw there. The other sort of interesting update, or just, mark it on your calendar and don't yell at me when you get the times wrong. LA Galaxy at Sporting Kansas City on September 24th. The time has changed and the channel has changed. This was originally scheduled for a 10 a.m. Pacific time kickoff on ESPN, and it's now scheduled for an 11 p.m. or 11 a.m., 10 a.m. It used to be 10 a.m. Now it's 11 a.m. Want to make sure I get that right. 11 a.m. Pacific time kickoff on Fox, Broadcast Fox, Big Fox. All right, this is part of the joint MLS and NFL regional broadcasts on Fox. So in our region, in Los Angeles, you should be able to watch the LA Galaxy take on Sporting Kansas City on Fox at 11 a.m. Pacific time. Just sort of want to get that out. Wendy, I don't know if you can see it. I don't know if you're looking at it, but I had the LA Galaxy schedule there. I wanted to I wanted you to just look at it because Kevin and I went over it. Is there a win on this schedule in these remaining 9 games, of which 5 are on the road?
Nah.
So you don't think they're going to beat Colorado this weekend?
I don't see us beating anyone.
Okay, could they beat?
That's why I'm all about lessons. I'm about lessons, Josh. I'm about
you don't
about
need
wisdom.
Wins. You don't need wins. You don't need any of that. I would go over.
I'm about wisdom. I want wisdom.
I would go over the standings, but the LA Galaxy sits second to last in the Western Conference and second to last in the league.
Let's be generous. Let's be gentle and say we're below playoff position. We're below that.
Let's see. Let's go with suspensions. Nathan Smith ain't playing against Colorado. He has that red card. The red card stands. He will not be playing, which you would say, who cares, except that he was the replacement for Pele Van Arno. Expect Bradley Diallo to fill in on that. That's sort of where we go. The LA Galaxy will face off against the Colorado Rapids Saturday, September 2nd. This is an 8 p.m. kickoff time. So if you're a reporter, that means the gates open at 6. And if you are a fan, that means the gates open at 6:30, all right? Spectrum Sportsnet, that's to the stadium. The parking lots are open well before that. Spectrum Sportsnet, Spectrum Deportes has the coverage for that. Colorado coming off of a 4-1 loss to Real Salt Lake, Wendy, a game in which Alan Gordon got 2 yellow cards and a red card, so hasta la vista, Mr. Alan Gordon. So no Alan Gordon against the LA Galaxy, which means he cannot score a goal against the LA Galaxy, which may be the first break the LA Galaxy have gotten all season. I find that really interesting, by the way. So Colorado is a train wreck. They are the only team that is worse than the LA Galaxy this year, Wendy. Yeah, I know, which is, I said, they're the only thing that's keeping the LA Galaxy from being on the floor. They're that very thin, like, sleeping pad you camp with.
That is terrible.
The Rapids are in the middle of an 8-game winless streak overall in league play. They're 0-5-3, and get this, they're winless on the road this year, which totally means they could beat the LA Galaxy. And they're on a 13-game winless streak, and that stretches back to 2016, by the way. So they have not won a game on the road. I think they beat Houston on the road in 2016, which was their last road win. So it'll be interesting. 0-10-2 on the season on the road. We've already talked about how they're dead last, 6-15-4 for 22 points. That puts them 1 point behind the LA Galaxy. And of course, again, they're very dead last in the league. Absolutely the worst. So we talk about the LA Galaxy and all of their. So it sounds like Colorado. So if you're thinking that the LA Galaxy can win a game, Wendy, this is the game you think they can win. This has to be the game, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
We can beat anyone. We can beat the Colorado Rapids, and I hope we do. But
Yeah, no,
You know.
absolutely. No, so now you go into the LA Galaxy, and we talked about how bad Colorado was. The Galaxy are actually even in worse position in terms of their runs and their winless streaks. We already talked about the scoreless streak at 354 minutes. The Galaxy are on a 10-game winless streak. They are 0-9-1 in that 10 games, and they also come on a 10-game winless streak at home. So they're 0-6-4 at home. Their last win was on April 7th against a 10-man Montreal team. I say this every podcast just to remind people of how long it's been. The Galaxy won't have Giovanni Dos Santos. They won't have Jonathan Dos Santos because both of those guys are with the Mexican national team on call-ups for World Cup qualifiers. They won't have Clement Diop, who is the backup goalkeeper, which means Brian Rowe very well could be in the 18-man roster for the very first time since he has not been the starter against New York City was the last time. It's only been 2 games, but it seems like it's a bigger deal. So I'm hyping that up a little bit. The Galaxy,
That'll be interesting.
That's sort of the soap opera that continues to go. What is Brian Rowe on the bench, or do they go with one keeper?
I feel very, very bad for Brian Rowe.
It's totally
I feel bad
interesting.
for him.
It's a total interesting story, and I don't even know the specifics of it. So it's one of those things that I'll continue to ask questions about it to sort of see where that all went wrong and how that's going. Siggy has his people. You can already tell that Siggy has his people. He likes Jack McInerney over any of the other strikers. He's the guy who's on the bench constantly. So Ari Lassiter is a guy who he seems to have a little more faith in as well. So Ari Lassiter has sort of been showing. So you can start to see Siggy have his guys. And that's where finding a lineup is difficult. Jermaine Jones will be back available for this game. Ramon Alessandrini will be back available for this game. So expect at least Ramon Alessandrini to start. Jermaine Jones still has a wicked limp going on. So I'm not sure if he makes it back in terms of this game. But he probably will, because he always does, and it continues to be an interesting sort of thing about him. Jermaine Jones, by the way, has missed 12 games this season. That's 11 games injured, 1 game suspended. He has 1 goal, 2 assists. He has played 14, and he's missed 11 games. So I just wanted to sort of put that into context with everybody before we continued on. Wendy, what do you think? I mean, any chance Colorado, the LA Galaxy could possibly get a win? This is it. They have another chance against Minnesota. If you had $100 that the LA Galaxy would win this game, would you bet that $100, or would you put it on a roulette wheel on red or black?
Well, I'm a fan, so I would probably bet it on my team. But I mean, I hope the Galaxy win a game because more than anything else, I really care about the LA Galaxy fan base, and I don't want LA Galaxy fans to lose all heart. I want there to be a sense within the backbone of the fan base that this is something which will eventually be righted, because, it makes me really sad when I listen to people and they are, either resolute or brokenhearted or angry. I want us to be better than we are. I want to believe that the future holds better things for us than is right now. And ultimately, I am an optimistic person, and I do think that that is the case. So I probably wouldn't bet on the Galaxy out of any realistic expectation that they would win. But I would bet on them because I want to believe in my team.
It's fun, that's why everybody talks about sports fans. In the beginning of every season, there's hope, and that's why sports continues to be a thing, Wendy. Because even the worst teams, at the beginning of the year, you're like, hey, there's a chance. You never know. There's
a chance.
Hope springs eternal, as they say. And so, once the season is over and the LA Galaxy get to reload and players will come in, there will once again be hope and a chance, and, things will look a little brighter than they are now. And I think that they can certainly be. You look at Chicago, who was horrible last year, and, despite their recent form, they're a good team in Major League Soccer this year. And so there's chances for all this. There's chances for turnarounds, and you certainly can have that. And if any of my charts have shown anything, Wendy, and I've kept really good records this year.
It's shown more than anything else that you're a big nerd.
That I like the numbers and like putting them in charts. That is kind of fun. But besides the big point of that I'm a giant numbers nerd whenever it comes to like the LA Galaxy and scheduling and things like that. it shows that there have been dips, and that after every dip there's been a rise, and so you can see it. And it almost happens every 10 years. 97 was bad, 2007 was bad, so 2008 wasn't great. So I'm not saying that it's going to be perfect, but 2008 led to 2009, which led to 2010 in a Supporter Shield, which led to 2011 in an MLS Cup. I mean, these things run in cycles, and especially I think Bruce Arena had sort of dodged the cycles for so long that maybe it's inevitable. In order for the LA Galaxy in a capped league, in a league that preaches parity, in order for the LA Galaxy to be middle of the road, they had to have their worst season ever. Maybe that's an optimistic view of things. Maybe that's a simplification of things. Maybe there's a lot of hope in that statement. But just saying that there are rolls and there are waves and there are dips in these waves, and every time you're in a trough, eventually there's a peak again. And so for the LA Galaxy, you have to hope that there are people in place right now that you will once again get to that peak and not be stuck in the trough. Because right now it's trough city.
Yes, last weekend was the very first time in my life I've ever gone surfing. And I think surfing is a great way to think about this team and about being a sports fan in general, which is that, you get sucked out. Sometimes you get on the board and you surf a wave all the way in and you're standing and you feel like a champion. And sometimes you get on the board and you immediately get knocked off and the board knocks you over and you wind up diving into the surf and you wind up with water up your nose because, that's just sort of the unpredictability of it. That's one of the reasons why we think sports are interesting and dynamic. But it's also one of the things, you wind up with water up your nose.
Yeah, a lot of times you end up drinking seawater. So everybody's drinking seawater right now. But the LA Galaxy will face off against Colorado Rapids, another game. Listen, I'll tell you this. I know there's lots of people who aren't using their tickets, Wendy. I know there's season ticket holders. If you paid for them, you get to decide what you do. And I am not the support police here. All right, so I'm not going to tell you have to go there. I would suggest that you should go and you should see what you can learn from the LA Galaxy down these stretch of games, because I think there's going to be lessons, and I think that's going to put your mind space into better ideas of who's coming, who's going, who's staying, all that sort of thing going into this offseason. So I would suggest you do it. If you do not want to do that, I understand. I would suggest, however, being that you're probably not going to be able to sell your tickets, because God knows that's not happening, I would suggest that you donate your tickets, and you can do that, and you can donate it to the, I think, Ticks for Vets does a great job, and so you can donate your tickets, and then they give them to some veterans who can come in and see the game. And with Fleet Week in town, dedicate those tickets and see if you can fill the stadium up with some veterans, and some service members, and that's a great way to do it. So that's like my plug, because I did that this week, and I think it's a great way to sort of continue. If you can get other people going to see games, even if it's not a great game, maybe you provide a little relief for somebody. So that's my my one little pitch there. All right, Wendy, anything else that you want to get out before we end this particular show?
Not at all.
Not at all? Okay. Why don't you tell people where they can find you, and we'll go.
You can find me at Corner of the Galaxy and American Soccer Now, and on Twitter at Bartsblonde.
All right. And if you're looking for me on Twitter, it's at JGuesman, JGUESMAN. And of course, go to @Galaxy Podcast as well, where you can find all of our articles. We'll have a game preview up for the Colorado game. You can find all of our previous podcasts. Galaxy Notebook is up there as well and get you updated on the team. So go head on over to cornerofthegalaxy.com. All right. Don't forget to head over to my good friend Robert Morris and make sure that you sign up for his photography class if you can. Remember, promo code Galaxy, canon.us/soccer. All right. For Miss Wendy Thomas, I'm Josh Guesman. Hope everybody has a safe and wonderful holiday weekend. We can't wait to see you back here on Monday or Tuesday night when we record again. Have a wonderful time out at the game if you're going, and make sure you say hi to me if you're there. This has been Corner of the Galaxy on cornerofthegalaxy.com. Have a great one, everybody.
You've been listening to the Corner of the Galaxy podcast on cornerofthegalaxy.com. You can follow the show on Twitter and Instagram at Galaxy Podcast. And be sure to check out and subscribe to iTunes, Stitcher, and Facebook by searching for Corner of the Galaxy. And for all of your independent LA Galaxy news, discussion, and entertainment, including this podcast, head on over to cornerofthegalaxy.com. Fans, thanks for listening. We ask that you be kind and courteous to your neighbors as you leave the podcast. We thank you for joining us and look forward to seeing you again. Until then, I'm Michael Araujo, and on behalf of the entire Corner of the Galaxy crew, goodbye, everyone.